Well, good morning. I only a couple of minutes late, which is not bad. Hi guys, how is everyone? Can I get an audio check? Check, 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 check. Mr. Simpson, welcome. Henry, welcome aboard. Henry says, "Are the old guys having trouble with computers?" Oh, you're in for it, man. Carl, how are you? Can I get a audio and video report from the field? According to the YouTube, we are live. We have 713 concurrent viewers. Audio good from Carl. Thank you, Thomas. Robert, welcome. Brian, John, excellent. Well, yeah, there were a few technical issues this morning. Nothing major. Got it all tuned up. You're in for a treat. Hey, Carl, how are you? Thank you for your questions. So, we'll be taking questions from the chat. We also have some questions that came in via message. Uh, Number 13. Excellent. That's lucky. So, welcome. It's New Hampshire. It's overcast. Temperature is 44 degrees. And we're generating about 5 kilowatts of solar electric, and the truck is plugged in. I know some of you are worried about that, and I appreciate it. Yeah, well, I can't wait for you to listen to those guys too. They are actually here. They're actually in the outer room having green M&Ms. It was in their contract. They had to have a bowl of green M&Ms, and they're sitting next door eating them. So we'll bring them in a couple of minutes. Usually we allow 5 minutes for everybody to file in, but it looks like you guys were in the waiting room, so we'll get going pretty quick. We have some future stuff coming where we'll review the Instagram posts for the week. I realized that not everybody who shows up on YouTube is on Instagram, so we'll do that next week. We're not going to do that now. But I have been doing some lapping in the shop and just getting used to that process, and we'll be talking about lapping today. We'll be answering questions. We got some really cool questions about various things, which these guys do not expect. They have not been briefed. And if you have questions, once we get rolling here, put your questions in the chat, and I will do my very best to make sure we cover those. Okay? Are there any questions or issues that don't have anything to do with our guests today? Let's talk about that now, and we'll get that out of the way, because they're still eating green M&Ms over there. So, you guys have enough M&Ms? You're okay, Robin. Hair and makeup. It happens all the time. These guys. The talent. Okay. So what are you guys up to today? Let's get some temperature reports from you, and then we'll get underway. I know you're all excited. We had flurries like 24 hours ago, and it's like 44 degrees right now. So I think what we're going to do, Brian reports 50 degrees in northeast Ohio. I just posted a picture on Facebook. That's looking good. Yeah. No, the light's good. Turn the light on, Robin. Yeah, turn the desk light on. Yes. Don't change a thing. We love it. Okay, good. The green M&Ms are still lasting. 8 degrees centigrade in Saarland, Germany. Welcome. CJ Stevens reports 50 and sunny in East Tennessee. Robert Simpson, just north of Detroit, 49 degrees Fahrenheit. Brian says shop organizing again, still and forever. It does not end. So with that, I want to introduce you to our guests today. They need no introduction, but I'll still introduce them. Let's just bring them in and see if this thing works. Sleeping Saloon says it's 64 degrees in Louisiana. Very nice. Excellent. You guys out of green M&Ms? I think they're out of green M&Ms. So let's bring them in. Please welcome Tom Lipton and Robin Renzetti. Hi, guys.
Hey,
Hey.
hi, I'm Robin Renzetti, and I like pina coladas and dancing in the rain. So,
There we go.
There we
I'm
go.
looking,
Got it.
I'm
Hey,
looking for my Zoom meeting here.
can you hear the audio?
Yeah, I can hear the audio. I went to the actual YouTube, and that's out of sync. So,
Oh yeah, you definitely have to be on the Zoom meeting.
yep.
yeah.
For those of you who don't know, Mr. Tom Lipton is the superintendent of machinists at the Berkeley National Laboratory.
Yeah, that's not exactly accurate. So,
There
I
we go.
fig- I figured I'd create an error and then we
There we
fix
go.
the error.
okay, we can talk about that. So, yeah.
Okay, so
A lot of people get that wrong. So that's what they think I do there. So,
okay, well we'll fix that. Um, in fact, why don't you take this time to introduce yourself and give us your credentials and your social security number,
credentials.
please.
I don't have any credentials other than I've made a lot of mistakes. So, and I'm old. So, but that's how you learn this stuff, by making mistakes, right? So but to correct you, I don't supervise all the machinists at Lawrence Berkeley Lab. I am in charge of what's called the technical group, and the technical group is all the mechanical technicians. So these are the boys and girls that fulfill all the scientific program needs. So they assemble equipment, vacuum systems, optical systems, high voltage systems, things like that, and they do. Some of them do a little bit of machining, but yeah, these are mechanical technicians. The machinists are separate at the lab, so it's a separate classification. They're they're actually kind of confined to one building, which is our main fabrication facility, which is, I don't know, 300,000 square feet of machine tools and machinists, and every tool that you can possibly imagine, times two. So,
Wow.
yeah.
And is it true that you know how to run all of them?
No, absolutely not. So, no, most of the people that I supervise are better at their jobs than I am. So, uh, I just give them what they need and kind of get out of their way, right? And that's usually the best recipe. So,
Outstanding.
yeah.
And Robin, give us a quick introduction, although I don't think you need an introduction, but there are probably new people here today.
Well, it's an honor to be on with Tom Lipton, and you guys should know that if it weren't for him, I wouldn't even be on Instagram or YouTube. So his few comments on about needing to give back to the vocation that he enjoyed so much and has been so good to him, that struck a note. And that's why I started YouTube and Instagram. And before that, I was like, Instagram, forget that stuff. I didn't need to go on there. And so, yeah, he was the first machining channel that I went on to that caught my attention. And I liked what he was doing there. And I said, oh, okay, this is probably where I should be.
That's a great story. I had no idea that he was the impetus for that.
Yep.
That's pretty cool.
I think I had a video kind of where I talked about that a little bit, and that was kind of what was instilled in me by my mentors, right? And that we're just kind of renting this knowledge, right, while we're here on the planet, right? And part of your responsibility is to teach other people, right? If you can. And and it's certainly, I mean, my mentors certainly took the time to answer my stupid questions and comment on what I was working on and how I might do it better in their own special way for a lot of cases, right? And so I, kind of formulated my career around trying to give back when I can, right? And teach people and share what I know, right? As if I don't, it just dies with me. So that's no good.
So, Robin, you're in Pennsylvania,
Yes.
and you're currently like doing consulting. Is that a correct description?
Um, my path was a apprenticeship at a general job shop that was extremely rewarding. Um, Lots of variety of work. And then I ended up at a place that was starting to make diamond rolls. So my entire business, actual money making business of machining has been involved in that particular area, precision spindles and tooling for that type of stuff. Um, and that's where the requirement for high precision came in also, because a lot of that work requires, you know, sub-tenth work. And yeah, that's the general path. So I've had basically the same when I started, it was with Mr. Dunnington, co-inventor of DuPont explosively formed diamond. He was the owner of Dunnington Company, and then it went through, actually it was Glenell then, and then it went through a gazillion different things. It's now owned by 3M, and it's a division of I think Winter Tour. The That's what 3M bought. So they've been a customer all that time and been my primary source of income.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing that. Warren Jones, who's local to me, says, "Thanks to Robin and Tom, I have taken that same attitude toward teaching and mentoring, and it has made a difference." That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Nice to
Uh,
hear.
Henry in Germany says, "I like this mentality. In Germany, many people have a mindset that they would rather not share their knowledge because someone else might be better than them."
There's lots of people
Yeah,
that are
well,
better than us.
yeah, exactly, right. But if that 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 feedback mechanism is important in your learning, right? And I've seen a lot of machinists that have, adversarial relationships with inspectors, right? And um, and this is a bad attitude, right? These people actually make you better, right? And for the most part, and because if you can't measure your output, you don't even know what you're doing, right? And that's an important. So being open about the flaws or the attributes of your work, right, is important. So
Yeah, I like the community we have because when when we discover new ways of doing things, or we fix a problem, we'd like to quickly crank out a video and say, "Hey, I just figured out that this or
yeah.
that," and it shares the knowledge with everybody, and I think that's a fantastic way to do it. So
But that I just want to say something real quick there. The About the community, right? Is that the community certainly keeps me going, doing this stuff, and sharing that online, right? And I think we're extremely lucky that the machining community on YouTube and Instagram is, for the most part, really great folks, right? And when you compare it to some of the other genres, right, that you can possibly get into, right? And sure, there's some negative comments here and there, right? But for the most part, I'd say the bulk is pretty positive, and you get to meet people like Robin and Spencer and Tom and Andy and Carl and all these different people, right? That you never would have met if you hadn't like dipped your toe into the water, right? So thank you guys for that. So for being part of this great community. So
John says my audio seems low. Like Zoom is taking the
you're,
audio from the camera, not the USB mic. Is my audio low?
Not on my end.
no, I don't think so.
Is it lower now? Okay, we're gonna live with it. I think I see what you're saying, but yeah, we're good. Carl says amen to Tom.
Oh, thanks,
So
Carl.
what? Let me kick this off with tell a brief story about a recent young apprentice that you have helped out without obviously without identifying names. Whoever has the first story, let it rip.
Hmm, good question. I think I told the story about the Russian guy. I can't think of his name right now, and he wanted he wanted a sticker or something like that. I can't quite even remember the circumstances of it, but it's a young person in Russia, and he had watched tons and tons of YouTube machining videos, right? And he reached out to me and said, hey, thanks for the videos. Um, I was a computer programmer, and um, you know, not very happy in my career, right? And so started buying equipment and outfitting his, I don't know, a back bedroom or a basement or something like that, right? And got into machining, right? And had been doing that for 1 to 2 years, something like that. Anyway, the guy kind of bullshitted his way into a job at a local machine shop, right? And said, "Oh yeah, I've been machining for a couple of years, right?" He kind of bent the truth a little bit, right? And well, the guy gave him a job, and apparently he's still there. So anyway, he reached out to me to thank me, for kind of doing whatever it is that he thought I did to help him, right? And into finagling his way into a shop, right? But he was very grateful, and he wanted an autograph or a sticker or something. I can't quite remember what it was, and he told me his story, and I just thought it was so great that I said, you know what, I'm gonna do even better. I said I'm gonna send you a copy of my book that's autographed, right? And but here's what you got to do for me, right? And I said you got to send me a picture of you holding up the book in front of some famous communist landmark or something like that, right? Just for fun, right? And so he did, right? And here's this poor guy, right? It's the middle of winter, and this river that's a mile wide, right? It's frozen solid. He's standing there, crunched up, holding the book, right? And his girlfriend takes a picture of the him and the Joseph Stalin, Memorial Bridge in the background, right, or whatever it was, right? And he sends me the picture, and I'm like, it's great, right? Um, and I haven't talked to him in a while, but I think he's still working as a machinist and enjoying it, right? So I don't know, that's one of my recent stories, and that I just like that story. So
That's pretty cool. Very, and your reach around the globe is pretty obvious there. How about you,
Yeah.
Robin?
Mine's the exact opposite. The reach is out the door to the garage, because the only person that I have any actual shoulder rubbing with relative to machining in person is my son. Um, who oddly enough didn't really have any interest in machining, still isn't like in love with machining, but he likes what he's doing. He likes it. He's actually warmed up to um, enjoying what he's doing. A lot of it was he just felt frustrated because, hey dad, hey dad, hey dad, hey dad, and just felt like he was more of a burden than a help.
Hmm.
And now he's at the point where I can give him something and turn him loose practically on just about anything, and with very minimal guidance. But the real treasure of all this, and if I can do this without getting choked up, is um, obviously when I'm there, I'm giving him all I've got, PhD level. Why am I telling you to do this? What's the mechanics? This is why I want you to understand. So you're not just following the rules. I want you to get this first principle to what's going on. Well, that has turned it into everything in life. He realizes that, like, just in the kitchen, how you cut things, everything. When you start thinking like an engineer and get enough of it in your brain, you can't turn it off. Everything is a mechanical issue, whatever you're working on. So just seeing that, and
Hmm.
and he gets a lot of joy out of that. He just seeing that spark. He's like, Dad, I've been here too long because I can't turn it off. So really, really, that's really great to see.
That's pretty neat. Yeah, my
That,
kids. Go ahead, Tom.
no, I was going to say I can see you're real proud of him, and that's pretty cool getting to work with your son, and you can see his development too, right?
Yeah,
So like
yeah,
firsthand. So bravo. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, my son is all about the computer right now, right? So I have not. He sits next to this machine shop. He could go in there and learn anything and do anything, but I haven't quite attracted him to that. But work on the computer, build a computer, the computer. He's all he's all about
Yeah.
that right now.
He's on it, huh?
Uh, well, cool.
That's cool.
Let's kick off a couple of questions we have from the group. So I had asked for folks to send questions in, and this will just get us rolling here, and see what we got. I'll do these in chronological order for no apparent reason. Mr. Carl Tauber, who is actually in the chat right now, sent in 12 paragraphs of questions, which I appreciate, Carl. There are members of our community that enjoy the detail. I will point that out. So basically,
Yes.
Carl, he said that there was you made this is everybody's going to answer this, but Robin, you made the repeatometer analog, the Renzetti meter, and you ground the feet to have deliberately sharp edges, whereas in other cases where we make feet, like carbide feet, some people will chamfer those edges. And Carl asks, it's a departure from, quote, good machining, close quote, to leave a sharp edge. And he would like to hear of other examples of sharp edges that are left. He also points out that Adam B did a cylinder square where he chamfered the edges of the cylinder square. So the basic question is, when chamfer and when leave sharp, and in particular he's talking about feet. So let's start with Robin.
My premise on feet for a surface plate is that a chamfer is a lead-in for particles to get pulled under. So if you have a plate and you have ambient dust and all these things, if you have a dead sharp edge on your foot, which is dangerous, you have to be very careful about how you handle things, putting them on the plate. If you're sloppy and have these things, chamfer will still leave chip the plate also, but the sharp edge is going to even be more so that. But that dead sharp edge is a squeegee. And basically ambient dust is just plowed out of the way because there's no guidance for it. It can be argued 45 degrees isn't enough for it to actually, it's not like a 10-degree wood where it's actually really guiding it to roll under. but that's my premise for that in general. Measuring feet on a surface plate, dead sharp, so that they don't do that. But you'd have to be careful. And so technique for that is always having a ledge that's close to that. So when you put it down, you can put a linear edge down, then slowly rock it down to the one edges, the leading edges of the two front feet hit, and then rock down to the other foot type thing, and just to be careful with it. But that's the premise.
So you're basically saying a chamfer has the potential of allowing grit to get under it as you move it.
Yes. And remember that grit's very small. We're talking about ambient dust that's falling all the time. As we all know, you clean your surface plate, you wipe it off. Oh, dead smooth. 3 seconds later, you wipe your hand over it, and there's stuff on it. So
Yep.
you just have to consider the fact that the plate is always dirty, and you want it dry. The good part, why you want it clean and dry, is that there's no tackiness holding that dust to the plate. So if you have a plate that's not clean and has handprints and hand oil and all that, you're inviting things to cling and get pulled under, even with sharp edges. So that would be my premise on why to do that.
So let me just add to that a little bit in that for the majority of kind of average surface plate work, this is probably I wouldn't call it overkill, but you would never notice it. Okay. But once you start dropping down in sub-tenth and into the micro-inch range or whatever, everything counts. And dust particles, thumbprints, anything, right? And that's the challenge at that level, is to get any kind of consistency. You just have to eliminate as many variables as possible, right? And temperature, it's just it's Rubberville, right? And particles of dust and cat hair are enough to really screw with your operations.
So as I've been playing with some of the micronish things and smaller, I've been thinking about making a plexiglass shield that's kind of portable, that you could put your hands around. But quite frankly, humans are pretty dirty at the micron level, and we were dropping dust and skin cells and hair and crap. So when we're working over that, that critical work, I was thinking that it would be kind of a good idea to have a plexiglass shield that you can put over that, and also that would serve to help with some thermals. So you have any thoughts on that, Tom?
Yeah. No, I mean, it would certainly help, right? It's the challenge there is access to your tools and things like that, right? For example, if you had a whole bunch of a single type of measurement to do, right, where you could kind of set it up and then cover it for as much as you could so that you could still access the things, yeah. But a general purpose solution seems kind of would be challenging, I think. So, unless you want to create a clean room and then wear a bunny suit and do that whole thing, right? Which we have those kinds of arrangements at the lab, right? And for clean and particle-free assembly, right? Some of these detectors and vacuum systems and whatnot, a fraction of a thumbprint is enough to contaminate a vacuum system, right? Or a very, very special mirror or something like that. So, in fact, there's one mirror that it's a monochromator mirror, right? And these are made out of silicon, right? And they have very, very specific curvatures to them that are, pretty crazily toleranced but somebody was and this is a very long time ago, they were measuring it or doing something, and somebody sneezed in the room or something, and then they saw some stuff on the mirror, right? And but the 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 tolerances and the quality of the surface is such that you can't even touch it, right? With anything. And it was in an area of the mirror that, wasn't as important as the primary area, right? So they just left it. So to this day, I guess, it's got a nickname like the snot mirror or something. I can't remember what it is, but they left these little sneezed particles on there, that was I've never seen them, but I've heard the story several times.
Serves them right. It'll affect science for the next 50 years.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
A gauge block comparator station will typically have a small plexiglass Lexan plate in front of it just to keep the breath from blowing onto the comparator station.
I try not to I try not to eat chili before we do any of those very fine measurements.
Yeah. So in one of Robin's videos, he does an excellent demonstration about just how sensitive this stuff is. And this is how Robin and I got to know each other, right? I was fiddling around with an old Pratt and Whitney level, right? And he reached out and said, "Hey, I'd be willing to grind and scrape this thing for you if you want, right? And throw it up on video." And I go, twist my arm, right? And so I sent it to him, and he was fooling around with it, and he got more than he bargained for a little bit, because I guess there was some corrosion in the base of the thing that opened up, and he's like, "Oh boy, here we go," right? But he persevered and finished it. But towards the end of the video, he does a demonstration where he's inspecting the thing, right? And he's basically just blowing on this thing and then dribbling a little bit of alcohol on it here and there, right? And you watch his the measuring instrument just go, it's just going all over the place, right? Actually, I don't quite remember. Did you just put your hand close to it, or did you breathe on it? I can't quite remember what you did, but it's just a really great empirical demonstration of just how fussy these things are, right? And but
that was a very early Robin video, right?
Yeah.
Well, Robin's got a lot of videos, right? And he was doing videos well before this one, and this particular video that we're talking about here, and where he's modifying calipers. He's got a little helicopter thing he's messing around with, and then what's he did? Oh, the super hot whammy Kelvin connectors, which is a really good series of videos. So so if you guys haven't, so many people they just watch the new video, right? And there's treasure in the archives, okay, literally, right? Every video I've ever put up on YouTube is still there, right? And I'm sure Robin is the same way, right? And instead of just waiting for the new one, there's some really good stuff to mine that, hey, maybe at the time that wasn't in your wheelhouse, but now it is, right? And so your circumstances change, so it's good to go back and look at those once in a while. Some
Absolutely.
Good stuff.
One of the reasons we came over here to YouTube for these things was because Instagram was. I challenge you to go find some of the old Instagram videos. The user interface is horrible, and we wanted it to be.
It's hard.
We wanted it to be permanent and accessible. Let's see.
Did we answer Carl's question? I don't know.
I think we did.
Yeah.
Carl, you have the opportunity to tell us whether we answered your question or not, because you're here, and that's why you show up to these things. We'll find out. So, on the topic of the chamfer versus the sharp, I have some tooling on the for the grinder, some tool holding, and I did the same thing. I leave it dead sharp, And it is sharp, and I've cut myself on it, so it just shows you. Carl says, I think Robin had the gain cranked up on his Brown and Sharp electronic indicator and was able to detect his hand nearby. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I don't remember exactly, but I think I just hovered my finger over it and just let the radiant heat of my fingertip warm the top surface of the level, or the actual base of the level. But it's cantilevered where there's the shorter section where the actual level vial's on, and then the longer base. And I had the indicator out on that longer base, basically where it could arc down from expanding, basically bimetallic strip effect.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Which should be in everybody's mind. Just every time you're thinking about thermal, you're just thinking the hot side's going to get longer and it's going to curve because of that. And that's the mechanics you need to keep it pictured. But yeah, I was just holding my finger over it, not even touching. And then after it went down, multiple micro inches the one way, then I brought it back by just putting alcohol on and let the alcohol, the cooling effect of the alcohol evaporating, bring it back the other direction.
So a funny footnote on that level, Robin, is I don't know, before I moved, I went to admire your scraping work and pull that level out and take a look at it, right? And the vial had burst, and the level vial had burst. It got too hot, or I don't quite know what happened to it, and but I looked and the thing's blown up, and I'm like, oh shoot, right? And so I took it apart, and then of course, that's like the opening to a rabbit hole, right? And so I start, oh well, let's see, can I buy a replacement vial? What can I do, right? And then, hey, well, why don't I make one, right? Oh, how do you grind the inside of it, and then off you go, right? You start looking at all this, and I built some tooling to lap the ID of the glass vial and control the curvature on the inside. And I bought some small bore gauges so I could reach inside there to evaluate the curvature as well. But I haven't gotten around to making one yet. And then that led me into, well, if I'm going to make a level, what I'd really want to make is one of those the fell types, the spherical types, right?
Yeah.
Because this is just a natural output of lapping, right? And is creating a spherical surface, right? And so anyway, started penciling and designing a little bit on that, right? So, but I haven't done either one yet. So, this thought exercise at this point.
I hope you're videoing all this vial stuff that you're doing. That's
it's
VIAL, not VILE. I'm just
yeah. I mean, like Robin, I don't video everything, right? A lot of this is you don't know what the heck you're doing anyway, so you got to think about it while you're doing it, right? And then you do something, and then you do a little checking. One thing leads to another. Honestly, I don't think it's very interesting video, right? And watching an old guy scratch his head and go, why did he do that, right? And or wow, that didn't work. And but I don't know. I guess some people like that stuff. So it's
well. This is apropos. We got a question here from Bernardo, who spells his username BE12 Nardo. I don't understand, but it's okay. I don't have to. Question for Rob and Tom: how often do they get into rabbit holes? I.e., making a tool to make a tool. I think we just answered that. But Robin, what's your favorite rabbit hole story from recently?
Lapping this surface plate and having a standard autocollimator mirror system, meaning just a normal 3 foot 3 feet and a mirror, and realizing that that's not the hottest setup. So I have a video where I did the corner mirror, rotatable corner mirror, and the other adjustable mirror. So that was a really fun rabbit hole. And that was one that I just, conquered. Um, and but that was to really actually cure an issue. Unless you have a particular style of autocollimator where the autocollimator stability relative to the plate isn't important, and there are that type. But a standard autocollimator, it cannot move from whatever orientation it's on while you're doing readings. So it almost pretty much has to be on the plate. And even putting a smaller plate on a larger plate and putting an autocollimator on there, what kind of feet do you have on the plate? Because unless they're steel, unless they have a large enough bearing area, you're going to get Hertzian deformation. The plate's going to tilt, even though you say, "Oh, it's solid material, well, hogwash." So that corner mirror lets you put an autocollimator on the plate and shoot 3 legs of a corner all in one setting, just by turning the corner mirror. So that was a real fun project to kind of reinvent the thing, and I think somewhat unique in the sense that I made it such that the foot of the sled could go underneath the corner mirror and be directly under its pivot point. And that makes sure that your 3 corner points actually are the same point, which technically, according to the specs, the actual federal thing, is a requirement. But I've never seen anybody do it because they never have that point actually match. And that's what that accomplished, was allowing that to happen.
That's a good example, because I know what went through your head. It's like, oh, I got this nice piece of granite. I'm gonna get my cast iron plates out and lap it and do a little inspecting, and then as you get into it, you start to see what's going on, right? And then imagine the tools you need to make it the way you want, right? So yeah.
Tools to make tools to make tools to make tools.
That's another, the game we're in.
Yeah, it's another thing. Some people might call it arrogance, but I'm always thinking I can design a better tool. Not only because of God-given abilities, not because anything special, but I can design a better tool. 99% of the time, because you put more thought into it. I might think about some of these things for months, and wake up in the middle of the night and be awake for 2 hours thinking on something, and just your mind's constantly churning on that. And then you get an idea and you think, oh, this is perfect. And then you go lay it out in SolidWorks and say, oh, it's not quite so perfect. And then you let it sit and you come back with something totally better yet again. So,
but if you were a tooling company like a Mitutoyo or a Starrett, and you were going to make a tool that was that good, you would have to recover all the costs of the time and the brain power and the knowledge. So it would become ridiculously expensive, and that's how
I'm saying that more
that's
for
the. Well, go ahead, Robin.
I'm saying that more for people's attitude of have an attitude of, just because this was the wing-ding thing that's great, it has always been, this is the revered whatever. It probably needs a redesign. If you really want to get technical about it, there's probably a way to make a better one, a simpler one, a more accurate one. And I think having that mindset, at least looking for that, not like you have to make every tool and have to conquer everything. And it's not like every tool that I do isn't a copy of something else, but always looking for a refinement that makes it nicer to use or whatever. And there's lots of little things like that turn up if your wheels are always churning for that.
Yeah. It's you touched on something there that I wanted to comment on, is this to me, I call it a marinating process or a percolating process, right? And Robin mentioned it is, you're working on a problem, right? And maybe it's at work, maybe it's at home, I don't know what, right? And if you're under some time constraint, right? like, okay, I got to have an answer by tomorrow morning, right? Okay, you're pretty much going to take the first decent solution to the problem and just go with that, right? Now, if you don't have those constraints, right, what I tend to do, and it sounds like Robin is very similar in that respect, is you go, okay, well, what's a good way to do this, right? And so you think of an idea, and you kind of, it's like a coat. You kind of put it on and you try it on for size and see how it fits. And you know what? That seems kind of not where I want it to be. You know, how could I do this a little bit better, right? But it's not something that you're actively doing, right? So you might get off of that project and go on to something else. But in in my case, my subconscious is working on that problem, right? Somehow, right? And at the weirdest times, you know, you're reaching into a drawer to pull something out and you see something in the drawer and you go, oh my God, there's my answer, right? And then bam, now you're back to that problem, right? And you're on to something, or maybe you have a new area to explore with that problem, right? And I can't control it, and I doubt Robin can control it. It just happens, right? And
Yeah.
but your brain is kind of chewing on it in the background, or marinating, as I call it. And but you're also, um, I certainly am constantly gathering information, right? You know, a lot of times when I am stuck on a problem or whatever, I'll just go to the hardware store and walk around, right? And with no agenda, right? I'm just going to walk around the hardware store and look at stuff with open eyes, right? And many times you'll go, oh, well, that's an interesting latch, and then one thing leads to another, to another, to another, right? And then now you're onto something, right? But guys like us that are interested in this kind of work, and that's kind of our careers, right? We're constantly constantly gathering pollen or fluff from the from our environment,
Hmm.
right? That's
Yeah.
adding to our understanding of the world, right? And then connecting that back to the problems that we're working on is this kind of weird magical process, right? That I don't know if it's teachable, or we can describe it, but I certainly can't turn it on and off. It just happens, right? So does it sound like what happens with you, Robin?
Yeah, very, very similar. And I think both of us would agree. We've had a long, long, long time of designing a huge amount of stuff. And that mental condition, that mental muscle memory, mental paths that you develop, you just keep getting better and better at it. And
That's
and
right.
there's things there that are formed that things just boom, 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 come to your mind because you've done the simple stuff, just flows easy. It's the tough stuff that you slow down on.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
that's just because we've both been very blessed to have avenues to be able to do that, and have the chance to get paid to think like that. But both of
Yeah.
us, even if we weren't getting paid, we'd still be doing it because we just love it.
It
And
it's
it's,
true.
yeah.
So Adam Balog is in the chat, and he says, Tom, he remembers you brought in some leather mats for garden pots that you found at the hardware store, but turned out to be perfect substrates for metal polishing.
Yeah, that's a funny story, right? Adam, let's see. I can't remember what he was doing. He was oh, you know what? He was doing metallography samples, right? And so prior to etching the samples, right, you need kind of a high finish on them to for the etchant to do what you need it to do, right? And this is kind of, I don't know, or fairly early in when I kind of got in the rabbit hole of lapping, right? And I was, experimenting and playing around in the shop, right? And by the way, that's one of the allures of lapping, is the surface finishes that you can produce, right? it's just like nothing else that you can do, right? And it's pretty cool that way. But anyway, he was showing me some samples and of what he was doing, and he was having a hard time getting that high finish, um, and I bought these. They were cork with a leather facing, and they were to put planters on or something like that. They were at Home Depot, and but they were really uniform thickness and reasonably flat themselves, right? But when you charge them with some 1 or 2 or 3 micron diamond, they actually would produce these really, really high finishes. Now, not good geometry, but excellent finishes, right? And so he came over to my shop, and I said, "Here, try one of these," right? And he's like, "Oh my God," right? And he ran off and he did his metallography samples, and I guess he can confirm. I don't know if they came out or not. I'm pretty sure they did, but it was one of these just weird things, right?
That's awesome. Kevin Blodgett, a regular here, says, "Do you guys keep a sketchbook or similar for your design thoughts?" We'll start with Robin.
Yes, I'll do some sketches. Um, and but usually once I've sketched enough to get the concept in mind, I can just think about it. My 3D perception, probably most people's 3D perception is good enough to, it's just like working with SolidWorks in your head. As far as being able to picture the parts meeting together and all that. I think Tom would say the same thing. When you've done enough of it, that stuff just becomes second nature, picturing it. Yes, SolidWorks CAD helps when you need to put numbers on it. That the sketches help you get your mind engaged. Something might be complicated on how it goes together. More intricate mechanisms might need a couple sketches to kind of guide your mind to keep it straight on what you're trying to do. But yes.
Yeah.
What about you, Tom?
So yeah, so uh, you know, my career started out, and I think Robbins did too, was kind of pre-CAD, right? Pre-electronic CAD, I should say.
Yeah.
And so we were hatched on a drafting board, although I never had a drafting board. It was always just a pad of paper or whatever, right? Um, but in the early or the late 80s or whatever, I started keeping laboratory notebooks, right, of all my kind of personal explorations and rabbit holes, literally, right? And so I have actually quite a few of them, and they bounce around, and they're full of little concept sketches. But at some point, you depart from pencil and paper or pen and paper or whatever, and you actually have complicated things to work out the relationships of, right? And spacings and arcs and movements and things like that are a little tricky to do in your head, right? I mean, you can see them working in your head, but when you start, when you have multiple pivots, for example, it's kind of hard to imagine those kind of arcs that those things take and whatnot. And so you kind of go to CAD. But I I personally, I have kind of I guess a bias that way a little bit, in that people tend to jump on the computer too quickly, I think, because it forces this artificial precision at too early of a stage, right? You really need to work in the silly putty in the sandbox a little bit before you get to the computer, right? Because as soon as you draw a line in the computer, it says how long and what diameter circle,
Right.
and how far is it from this? Is it tangent to that, or whatever, right? So it forces you, when you're scribbling in the sandbox or on paper or whatever. Those things are kind of meaningless when you're kind of working out. Nothing's to scale. You're just kind of, they're literally doodles, right? But your brain is working out all those kind of interactions and relationships, and then when you go, typically any design, there's some lower threshold. There's the smallest shaft or the smallest bearing or the ball or whatever that is the bottom end of the design, right? And or it's a bottle that we're going to be moving down a conveyor, right? So there's some key element in a design, right? Maybe it's the mirror on the mirror sled, or the size of the surface plate, or there's something that defines the local size of the design, right? And that's kind of where you start, right? And and it, designing from the inside out is from that kind of smallest regime, the smallest piece of the design, right, outwards, right? I see people going the other direction, and they get to the interior of their design, and now they need a tiny little instrument bearing that holds 5,000 pounds, right? And it just doesn't exist,
Well,
right? And
you just described my entire career in antenna consulting.
okay.
I get these calls like they're about to push the manufacturing button, and they're like, oh, I get this call. Can you put an antenna here? I'm like, okay, how much volume is that? Oh, it's like 5 cubic millimeters. You'll be fine. Like,
You'll be fine, right?
You'll be fine.
Right. Exactly, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, space constrained designs are probably the trickiest, right? And I'd have to say that I tip my hat to the watchmakers and that whole genre of work, right? It's extremely impressive what they do, right? And the small scale of the parts, and once again, everything kind of counts, right? All those little edges rubbing, little pivots rubbing on one another, and gear teeth rubbing on one another, and all that all affect the overall performance of that. And there's a lot of parts in a watch, right? So that's some pretty impressive work, right?
So Carl points out in the chat. He says it's a gift. Some of us can't picture stuff mentally, and I think there are people that have a hard time building a mechanism in their head, right, and spinning it around. Like I'm saying these words, and you guys know exactly what I'm talking about. But I think there are people that think differently. Like maybe they could look at a table of numbers and see stuff that we don't see. But
sure, oh yeah,
in terms of 3D, like you're talking about the watchmakers, can you imagine? I mean, just coming up with some of those complications.
Well, it's Robin points out too. It's kind of like exercise, and the more you do it, the better you get at it, or the stronger you get at it, right? And I was looking for something just the other night in my old pile of sketches, right? And literally, there's 50 pounds of 8.5 by 11 paper, right? That constitutes all these shop sketches and calculations and pieces and bits of machines and requests from customers and things like that, right? And that's just the paper part of it, right? And so I don't know, Robin and I have seen a lot of brackets, I guess is how I would put it, right? And we're bracket senseis, right? It's
that's a lot of brackets.
That's a lot of brackets, right? And it's that's the joke, right? You run out of names for parts, right? And it's I guess it's another bracket, right? So,
here's a question from the messaging. This is also from Carl. Carl is our shill today, by the way.
Yeah, sounds like it.
He says, and this is a long question. He says, a question for Tom about the intaglio press that he was building. The pressure required of the impression roller, the rubber roller that drives the paper into the printing platen, I think I caught an error there, is on the order of 300 pounds per inch of length. Since the impression pressure governs the efficiency of ink transfer, did I mention that Carl is into details? Any deflection of the press under load will show in the print. How does Tom plan to achieve the stiffness required of the press frame without enormous mass?
Well, that's a good question. So he's got a couple of details incorrect. Okay. So the rolls are not rubber covered. They're solid steel. Okay. And so in the case of the press that I'm working on, they're 8 inches in diameter by 48-inch width working area. Okay. So the deflection is low. Okay. Now there's deflection certainly, but it's fairly low. Now the other part of how intaglio works is, so you have 2 rolls that are basically drawing the work through, right? And they apply pressure, but they apply pressure to the etching plate through a wool blanket, so which acts like a
Like
what
an
do I want to call
equalizer?
it? Yeah, like an equalizer, or it distributes that load more uniformly, I guess. So there's some squish and in that. Okay, there's some squish in that, and you use different pressures depending on what the what kind of plate or what kind of printing that you're doing, right? And then it transfers that ink to the paper, which is wetted. The paper's wetted, so it's also kind of squishy and soft too, right? So it's kind of an interesting process, and this is how U.S. currency is made with this very similar process. But
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. I think I see where you're going with this. Is this another income
yeah,
stream for you?
Yeah, right. I'm going to print money, right? Yeah, I found some old throwaway dies from the U.S. Mint, right? No, not the case. So so honestly, it's actually a fairly forgiving process, right? In that respect, right? But to support those roles and get the styling that I wanted, the frame is actually fairly massive. So the total weight of the thing when it's completed is roughly 3,500 pounds. So
Wow.
it's a machine tool, basically, is what it is, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, I hope that answers this question. But
Adam B says,
this is how they've been made for hundreds and hundreds of years, right? So
Adam B says, my retirement plan is to make a Rose engine to engine turn printing plates and have Tom start printing off counterfeit greenbacks.
There we go.
And
right?
with that, we are now being monitored. Thank you.
Yeah. Right.
Tom, have you used your penny laps? Oh, the penny laps. I remember you made the copper penny laps, right? Have you used them in any practical application?
No, because that was a fun exercise, right? And but so that was kind of some ideas that were borrowed from the telescope making community, where they have these kind of segmented laps, and you know, people. I made some solid copper laps too, right? And they're wonderful for putting a really good finish on things and producing good geometry, right? They don't stay in shape very long. They tend to go away pretty quick, but they do produce really high finishes quite easily. And the penny lap was an alternate. I'm always like Robin. I was like, okay, well, gee, a chunk of 1-inch thick copper, 8 inches in diameter, right? That's kind of a pricey piece of material, right? It certainly is right now, right? So, my cheapskate brain says, well, what's another way you could do that, right? And kind of pie in the sky, right? And that you might be able to do that and get a decent result, right? And the penny lap was a kind of a exploration into that. Have I used them? Yeah, not really. Um, they they have a lot of because they're curved, the pennies are curved, right? There's a lot of converging gaps, right, that tend to snag when you try to clean them and whatnot. They snag the Kim wipes or whatever you're wiping them with, and so it's not perfect, right? It's a it was an experiment, right? So
So,
not everything we do is awesome, okay? So
only the stuff we publish.
yeah,
So,
that's right.
while we're on the topic of laps, Robin and I chatted months ago, and I was making these
Uh-huh.
round laps, and Robin said, "Hey," he said, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. Put a terminate all your grooves into this one peripheral trough, so that you don't waste all of your hard-earned slurry. And I've been doing that, and with my limited experience, because I am but a student here, it seems to be doing what it's supposed to do. It seems to be good, and I will point out that I know of at least 2 people who have already made laps using that idea, and that they're playing with it. So we got a bunch of lapping happening now, Robin, and
Yeah.
I think we're starting to see
Well, it's
some success.
so no, that's a good design feature, and it also um, it protects those the ends of the slurry slots too, right? It's like a little wall that protects the end of those, because when they come off of the edge of the plate, you basically have a fish hook almost, right? And
Mm.
in some areas on the plate, right? It's a really unfavorable edge. And so terminating them in a circular groove like that is actually a nice way to do that. And you get to mop up your diamond slurry or whatever that's running around. So yeah, it's
So,
good.
question for
There's,
Robin: what do you do or how often? What triggers you to literally go and soap and water clean your lap before continuing?
one comment before that. The one most handiest thing that I do to my laps that I haven't seen anybody you guys do yet is the groove, the middle groove, like my toolmakers flats, where you can get your fingers in. So instead of having to do
Right.
this
Yeah.
6-inch grip on top, having that lip,
Yep.
and if you're getting down to the nitty gritty, that's where you can do a 3D printed hollow ring so that you're grabbing onto a plastic ring, not conducting heat into the piece,
Mm-hmm.
and to handle your laps.
And
So
in the interest of full disclosure, you told me to do that, and I didn't do that because I ran out of time and lathe
Energy.
energy. Yeah, yeah. But no, that's a good idea, and I have been thinking about the 3D printed covers, and I'm probably going to do that pretty soon. So go back to my question: is
okay.
what triggers you? And I'm experiencing this, and I'm seeing. Okay, I'm getting all the black sludge now that's building up because I have some material coming off. What triggers you to go into a cleaning cycle?
Uh, when that gets to be obnoxious,
Yeah.
keep in mind that with the way that I lap, that bottom lap always stays on the bottom. Not necessarily for conditioning purposes. It might need to go on top to change the curvature of the lap, but in use, it's always on the bottom. Therefore, everything stays in that and doesn't drip out. But most of what I do, I'm not creating a ton of swarf because I've ground it pretty close where I'm only taking a tenth or so off to 2/10 maybe of
Mm-hmm.
lapping. Um, and so like when I do, you've seen me do those go no go keyway gauges where I got a whole slew of these like half by inch and a half various thickness metric, plus and minus gauges. Um, I do a whole set of those and never clean the lap. Now I will be making trips with slurry And because you really the principle is easy, but the subtlety of it is tricky. After a while, you just know what's going on. You're reading your bands, and you say, okay, I need to go here, and you make an adjustment there. Obviously, I don't have puddles of I don't let a puddle of in the moat around the lap. I don't let that get deep. I'll suck that all off with a paper towel. Um, but typically, I don't unless I have a scratch problem where I think I have contamination. I rarely actually wash the lap clean. I pretty much will just carry on and now I might take WD-40 in a toothbrush and scrub everything out to the moat and suck the moat up, but I typically don't, you know, I just keep them together. I'll put WD-40 between those two, and those two stay together for life, and just go back and forth. And
Yeah, we had one of our guys took his. You saw this. You commented on this yesterday. Took his flat stones and kissed the two laps and revealed the curvature of the top lap and the bottom lap, which I thought was a pretty good exercise just to show that it's there. But then you piped up and said, "Yeah, but now you just compromised your stones because you got a diamond charge lap." But that was pretty interesting. Paul,
remember on that all the reason that the precision ground stones work is there is no free abrasives available, and the plateaus are big enough that you don't generate any between the two stones. As soon as any particulate matter gets in between those two, all bets are off. That's no longer the case.
You're done, yeah.
You're done. So it doesn't matter if it's aluminum oxide, silicon carbide, it doesn't even have to be diamond. As soon as you've got grit between those stones, God help you.
Yeah.
You've ruined the magic of the stones. Now, is it going to totally trash them where they're not usable? You have to be pretty abusive to do that, but still, just don't want that to happen.
Yeah, go clean them now. And good luck. Paul says, I'm at least rinsing my laps after every use at the moment. Is that too much?
There's no harm in scrubbing them clean all you want. It's not like I'm saying that it's better not to clean them. I'm just saying I don't find that I have to do a ton of cleaning. And another thing is realizing how little slurry you need. So a lot of people probably, if you're not using pre-made slurry and you're using compound, you're probably wasting a ton of compound because it takes very little. I mean, I'm talking like a 6-inch lap. I'm thinking, 6 or 8 drops is enough to get swished around there and do the job. And the thing there is, if you do more than that, you risk getting into tumbling abrasion where you're really chewing the laps up. They're really each other, and you need to keep that. Once you've got your laps are in a happy place, you need to be very careful to not disturb that by using too much slurry, because that'll chew things up quickly.
Now, just to clarify, Robin, you're talking about a diamond slurry, and that's what I've been using and learning on. And Tom, I know you're a big fan of some of the what is it called? The
Time saver.
Time saver.
No, let me correct that. I'm a diamond guy too. Okay, once you go diamond, you never go back, right? It's just so efficient that you can't ignore it. The time saver is what I used to actually make the laps when I did the kind of the 3-plate thing with the laps, right? And
that was to avoid embedding diamond.
Yeah, because I wanted to use coarse and a coarser abrasive and whatnot. So and functionally, it was just a demonstration to show that you can create a flat plane with nothing basically, and just a decent sequence and observation, right? But no, I use diamond on all my laps, right? It's it's so cheap and it works so well. But to Robin's point is, when I was learning, right, the control of that film thickness was one of the big challenges, right? And you tend, oh, the part's hard to move, it's sticking to the plate, I need more stuff in there, right? And there's a lot of variables that you're trying to control when you're learning, right? And so most beginners, and I still consider myself kind of just out of the beginner stage, I guess, and a little bit, and is most people overdo it. There's too much pressure and too much liquid or too much film thickness, right? So they get rolled edges and they're using too much pressure. So now they're creating lots of swarf that they have to clean off, or it creates a scum layer on the lap. So you got to stop and clean it. So just consider that part of your learning process, right? Is that, and you see it in machinists too, right? Beginners, they use a lot of cutting oil, and they make a big mess, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the more advanced you get, the less you like to clean up, and you just put the oil exactly where you need to put it to do the job, right? So you're using very small amounts of these things. The lapping is very similar that way, in that less is generally better. Less pressure and less stuff swimming around on your plate, right? So.
Well, I'm definitely in the camp or in the condition of being the neophyte, using too much slurry probably. Hearing Robin say, 6 drops, and I'm thinking back to what I've been putting on the plate, and I'm probably triple that. And I am seeing.
Yeah, it depends. It depends what compound you're using, right? And so I have some of the, I don't know, Sandvik or whatever it is. They're like in a syringe, right? And this is a fairly high concentration. Yeah, it's like a paste, right? And it's a fairly high concentration of diamond too, right? So a cup, I mean, literally, we're talking, just tiniest little dabs on the plate, and then you're diluting it with Kingsford fluid or a lapping, basically a lubricant, right? To get things to move around, right? And then the other one I use is, there's a guy in Florida that sells these water-based emulsions with diamond in them that I actually really like, right? Because the cleanup is really easy. When you clean your plates and whatnot, it cleans up really easily. And it's got a decent diamond concentration in it too, and they don't evaporate real fast. So that's another thing. Evaporation plays a part in all this too, depending on what carrier you're using. So
I've been using the high pres liquid, and I've been doing 3 micron, and I find that it does dry out. That the water, it's a water base with
the water soluble.
Yeah, water soluble,
Yeah.
and so I started playing around with adding a few drops of distilled water, and somebody had something negative to say about doing that. I don't remember what it was. It might have been.
That was me.
Yeah. So that's what I suspected. Could you repeat what your challenge was?
Don't
with
do it. Yeah.
Well, there is magic to the carriers that these people are making.
Right.
They spend a lot of engineering and chemistry and things to make these things behave. A purchased slurry, whether it's water-based or oil-based, is going to outperform anything you do mixing compound and whatever you want.
So if I feel it's getting dry, just add a couple of drops of the slurry.
Because there's lubricant in there, and there's also rust preventative things. And remember, what I told you was that brown you're getting is the particles are the particles you're removing are instantaneously rusting because you've thinned it down with water to the point where the
Yeah.
corrosion prevention stuff that's in there is gone, and you're getting instant, rust of the particles. So you have
Eh,
that orange sludge. And
Yep, and I will point out that when I did experiments with aluminum oxide, and I think I was using WD-40. If you go down to my shop right now and you look at those plates, there's a little rust on them, and it makes sense. Okay, so I'm going to selfishly ask another lapping question. So I could feel when it's floating on the liquid, and then I could feel when it starts to suck down. And I don't want to use the word ring because that's not what it's doing, but it's hydraulically starting to really stick to the plate. How do I manage that? And is it, when that starts happening, is it because I got to go clean my plates and start over, or how do I think about that? And I want to hear from both parties.
Sure. So ideally, you're somewhere between those two worlds, right? And when it starts ringing down hard to the plate, you're probably too dry. And then when you're floating, right? And you're plowing a wave in front of the part, right? And it's rounding your edges, and you're not producing good geometry, right? The sweet spot is in between those, and you're managing that by how much slurry's on the plate, the film thickness, and the stroke length. A lot of things play into that. So that's my 2 cents worth.
Robin, you want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, and one thing that I may not have mentioned relative to lapping, and that's when I'm doing those keyway gauges. And a lot of people say, what about figure eight? And I say, I don't like figure eight. And I don't like it because you cannot control how you're orienting your piece. Half the mastery of that flat lapping is very, very precise pressure control. And one very, very important thing, single straight strokes in the long axis of the part. Okay. Period. If you're going in orbits, I looked at your lap, not being nasty, but looking at your lapping that you had some examples of, Spencer, and I said he's probably going in some kind of orbit. He might not be doing figure eight, but he's doing in something where he's not controlling. There's a magic to getting just the right pressure, traveling slow enough. In other words, if you go too fast, it doesn't matter what you do. Slow enough that you kill the hydrodynamic action between that and the grooves, where you're just getting a nice even drag. And when I do a lap, I will use the lap full length. I'll start on one edge and I'll take a pass all the way across. Whatever the part width is, boom. I'm always going the entire surface. And then if I'm done and I need more, I'll take a look at it then. I'll turn that lap 90 degrees, because if you don't, you're going to end up with striations and things from that. That's how you get dead straight bands, because you have to be actually controlling that. Plus, when you're doing those keyway gauges and things, you have to also do flatness, but size and parallelism. So I go over to my Heidenhain that reached to 2 millionths, my drop indicator style. Go over there. I survey what's going on. I know where I am size wise. Oh, I'm fat here. So when I'm on there, I'm doing the exact same thing, but I'm putting a little bit more finger pressure on the fat side and doing the same thing. Or I have to tilt it sideways and the same thing. Very, very subtle, but very slow, deliberate strokes where the placement is. You're doing this, you're going to play hell getting a flatness.
You said something that was really interesting, which was the speed. And I kind of imagined like a boat getting up on the step, right? You don't want that to happen.
Exactly.
That's interesting.
Right. So I want to add to what he said there too. and because he touched on something, and it's an important point, is there is a particular drag that you're looking for, right?
Mhm.
And when you do a bunch of this, you'll feel a bunch of different drags, but there is what I would call the sweet spot in the drag, right? When it's ringing down to the, or, I'm going to call it ringing, but that's not the right term. When it's sucking down to the plate, that drag is too high, right? And then when you're floating on the film, that drag is too low. There is a particular drag, and it's pretty hard to describe actually in words, right? But it's between those two worlds, right? And and that drag, part of that drag is developed by the speed that you're stroking the part, right? And but that once your body is kind of calibrated to that drag, when you're in the zone too, right? It's not a particular feet per minute or anything
Yeah.
like that, right? It's a feel, and that's one of the hard parts of this stuff, is that a lot of this, there's a lot of variables, and there's a lot of really touchy feely stuff, right? Like what Robin's saying is, when you're thick on one side or whatever, you're leaning with that finger just a little bit more on that side, right, to influence that side, right? And at that particular drag and that particular speed, right? Does that make sense?
Yep. Yep.
I'm digging it. Yeah, it makes me want to go downstairs and just start lapping.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, right.
The other thing that can cause that stickiness is if you don't have enough slurry and it's not charged. As soon as you start to get metal to metal with very little diamond, you can get that effect.
Mm.
And you can actually get smears that occur. If you get a smear on the part or on the lap, that's definitely a sign of either you're not charging it well with your conditioning plate. So I never put slurry on without taking the conditioning plate to it. It's always the conditioning plate to get that stuff distributed and worked into the plate. So
So
because it's
never put slurry on and then put the part down on it.
never.
Okay.
I mean, these are my rules, but whether they're right or wrong, I don't know. They work for me, but yeah, there's lots of optical people that might say, "Oh, you're full of it," but I'm just telling you what works for me.
The results speak for themselves. I will take it under advisement.
One other comment relative to that is, you did one off the cuff video where you were working the plates for, I don't know, 45 minutes or something, one plate on the other.
Oh, that was the initial.
Yeah, initial. Yeah.
Right.
Once the plates are in the zone, once I've got the plates to where I'm getting, basically as flat as the optical flat is. And once you get there, it's like nirvana. I mean, there is something just awesome about, you just feel like I'm king of the world, because I've conquered this beast. Once you get there, the conditioning changes to maintain that, you're paying very close attention. You see the slightest curvature. I'm talking about a quarter of a band of curvature is already, well, a lot. That's only on those 6-inch plates. That might only be like 2 circles with an inch overhang on there to change that shape. We're not talking about diving around here forever. Now, this, like I said, you've already got them where it's flat, but now this is very subtle, and this is like, okay, that was a little too far. Flip them over, one orbit and come back, but you have to have it to where you are capable of generating on that piece whatever the lap is, that long straight strokes in control. Yeah, that it can't be overstressed how important the how you press on the part. And it's not just pressing down. You have to, if you're pushing on that part, you have to realize that unless the part is only a millionth of an inch thick and you're pressing on the edge of it, there's a huge moment load you're generating. The thickness of your thumbs is where that pressure point is, or whatever you're pressing. You can't get rid of that moment load unless you literally take your hands and are torquing the part backwards. So while I'm pressing, when I'm going on a forward stroke, I'm literally torquing that part, countering that. because there is a moment load that's taking that part that way. No matter how hard you press down, you have to actually be torquing it backwards. One thing for like those laps or those gauges, I make like a plexiglass or a Lexan, or you guys could 3D print them. I make a nest where the part that's contacting the edge that's actually contacting the part is all the way down at plate level, just enough that it's not rubbing the lap. Up top, I have 2 bands at 0.2236 in from the ends of the part.
Yep. I've been. It's
uniform
funny.
distortion, right?
I was thinking about that this week.
Yeah, you press on that, number one, because if you're pressing with your hands, the part's getting warm from your fingers, and it'll come out. So once you get in the ballpark, you need to switch over to a carrier like that. The beauty of the carrier is it can put that vector all the way down at the bottom and almost eliminate the moment loading that's causing you to, the part to tip in the direction you're moving. So doing that, then you can go that still very, very controlled. But you can't just think you're going to willy-nilly take plates and do random stuff and not be thinking intimately about every single detail that's going on.
Yep.
There's a lot there. Once you get it, it's easy.
Well, it sounds like a lot of advanced skills that in the beginning feels like you're just like tripping over your own feet, which is exactly where I am right now. But I'm starting to see some of the effects that you're teaching, and that is super valuable. And it is I promise it will neither be willy nor nilly. Go ahead, Tom.
This is a good example of an operation where keeping notes and observations is kind of important, right? And I think you've been doing some of that, Spencer. And I think I saw some reasonably methodical looking notes and whatnot about it, right? Well, no, I mean, I've got several notebooks that are full of stuff on this, right? My observations of and like off to the side, it's like, why is it doing that, right? The big question mark, right? And then 2 pages later, aha, here's
right.
what happened, right? So that's your feedback mechanism, and then going back through that, and that's your process, right?
I've often said that the 3 most important words in science are, gee, that's weird.
Yeah, it's true, right? Yeah, it's true. Lots of discoveries.
Let's knock off another question here. Oh, by the way, if anybody requires a bio break, don't hesitate to say the word, and we'll make it look seamless. Has anybody? This is from Brandon Heinrich. He asks, has anybody been involved with or have an interest in robot combat competition? Have you guys been approached by any of these groups and done anything?
So a friend of mine, he taught at when I was in Benicia, he taught at a high school that wasn't too far away, and they had a first robotics team, which is these kind of school teams and whatnot. And so they had a little machine shop. So I used to volunteer a little bit. So that's kind of the extent of my. I would go in and help them with some parts, and you think physicists are bad, herding cats, right? Herding high school kids that have lots of crazy ideas is even more challenging. But no, I gave them a little talk on I don't know, design philosophy and kind of project management, because they have a fixed amount of time to do this work, right? And one of my core beliefs is overtime and crash all-nighters are just poor planning, right? And but not always true, but
Yeah, unfortunately for these kids, it's also sort of de rigueur. It's like this is how it's done.
Yeah. Yeah, and they're young, and the older you get, the more you value time, right? And so did it do any good? I don't know. I wanted them to put so basically, I don't know what they had, like 6 weeks or 4 weeks, or I can't remember now what the interval was, but I told my friend that was the teacher, and I said, you should just get a big digital clock that's counting down, right? And just
It's
put
a
it in
good
the
idea.
room, right? So when they're, there's just some physical indicator that time is leaking away, right? And instead of, waiting till a week before and just, doing a week of all-nighters to get the thing done and then not actually finishing either. But anyway, I don't know if it helped or not.
Have you had any exposure to this stuff, Robin? These first
No,
robotics kids?
none.
Our high school has a team, and there's another team in the next town over. And my makerspace that I'm a member of, they have a room dedicated to one of the teams. And I, poked my head in there last week and took a look at the mess. But it's interesting how these kids learn engineering from this, and that's neither positive nor negative, because it could be quite negative, as you're pointing out. And then sometimes, and this is just a minor commentary, I kind of sense that it becomes a little political, like the parents that are helping, or they start pushing things in directions that
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It's this particular school was actually, it was a private high school, and so there was some helicopter parents that were way, way, way too invested, right? And instead of just letting their kids experiment and explore and learn, right, they wanted a particular outcome, right? And
yeah.
But and then in this, I think some of the teams, in my experience, some of the teams were not how do I want to put it? To me, it's about teaching the kids how to use the tools to make these things and whatnot. But I had one team in particular. They were, I don't know, sponsored, or the leader of it worked for an aerospace company that was basically just making all the parts for the kids, right? And to me, I didn't feel like that was in the spirit of what the program was for, was to teach the kids and get them to put their hands on those materials and those tools and execute those things, and not so much about what they look like, right? But that whole exploration, right? And instead of just ordering a sandwich and having it delivered to you, right? And kind of a thing. So I mean, it's still a valuable program, I think, and it's a subject that kids are really interested in. So that part's engaging still, I think. So.
Brandon had a second question. He said, "You've all heard the news and seen the results of this Chat GPT artificial intelligence engines
starting cool, actually.
starting to become like accessible and usable and a little scary." He says, any predictions on what AI could do for the future of machining, manufacturing, CNC programming, design, etc.?
Yeah, well, if there was a way to feed parts into it and have them evaluated from a manufacturability standpoint, and that doesn't seem like that far-fetched, right? I mean, Robin has I would say, a kind of a limited customer base, right? He works primarily for just a couple people, right? One of the things that I end up doing is evaluating parts for manufacturability from some of the designers and the engineering teams, right? And I've been doing this for a long time, and the same mistakes that I saw made 40 years ago are still being made today, right? And
well, when you have something effective, why change it?
yeah, why change it, right? So, but an AI system doesn't fall victim to that, right? Necessarily, right? And it's so yeah. I don't know. I could see that adding some benefit, right? It's
So what you're saying is that an AI system would have a perfect memory, whereas humans have imperfect
that's
memory.
right. Don't make that mistake again, right? And I mean, humans classically ignore history, right? And pretty much across the board, right? And that history could be, engineering design, or by the way, don't attack that particular tribe because they're going to kick your butt, right? And right, I mean, so humans don't. We like to think we learn from history, but we kind of don't. My observation, at least.
Have you had any exposure to this new Chat GPT stuff, Robin, or seen any of it on the intertubes?
I actually tried it out on laser settings, and it actually came back with surprisingly relevant content. Didn't answer the questions. It wasn't stuff I didn't pretty much already know from my limited research, but I was surprised how well it did for that. But that's the extent of my trial.
Yeah, I listened to a bunch of podcasts, and it seems like some people are getting programming done, like Python code written by the GPT. Hey, give me a user interface so somebody can calculate a prime number based on, and the thing will just start spitting code out, which by all reports is not perfect, but it's spitting code out. It's like, that's nuts. Yeah. So we will see.
I played around with it too. I asked it some what I thought. Are you still signed up for it, Robin?
I just did a free trial thing that was there. I haven't been back.
So I asked it some real specific questions about sheet metal forming, for example, and it had some actually, I would say, legit responses, right, and that were correct. It fumbled a little bit. I asked it a question about interpreting interference bands on optical flats, right? Just kind of a random question, right? And now one of the things that you can do too is you can actually provide feedback too if the question was answered accurate, well, or just you can comment on the thing, a thumbs up or thumbs down or whatever. But it kind of missed one of the key points of interpreting the bands, right? And but for the most part, it was a pretty relevant response, right? And then the other thing I had to do, just for fun, is I gave it an imaginary name. I said, okay, please write a positive performance review for Spencer Webb in the role as a mechanical engineer working on a project, blah, 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 right? And it just immediately, spit out actually a pretty good performance review with the right number of adjectives and positive upticks and whatnot. And I said, heck, that's my side hustle for work now. Is just send me a couple of details about said person, and I'll fire you back appropriate performance reviews.
I wondered why I got this text that said, "Who's this guy, Tom Lipton?"
Yeah.
All right.
It's a fun thing to play around with. It's kind of interesting.
We are well over our time, which I'm very appreciative of. This is a great closing question. What would you do if you had a second life in the shop? What projects would you start that you wouldn't otherwise? And this, by the way, I didn't tell you who this came from. This came from Mr. Chait Gaputta, ChatGPT. ChatGPT is the guy who sent this.
I don't know. I mean, if I had a second lifetime or whatever, honestly, I'd probably do the same stuff, right? But I don't know. It's been probably more time with certain people, I think, that were an influence in my life. I don't know. And I don't know, hard to say. I honestly, I think I would probably do the same stuff. So if they said, "Hey, you get another 80 years or whatever, keep going," right? I don't think I would change what I'm doing at all. But yeah,
That's
I
a, it's a
don't
good
know. It's
sign.
kind of a,
That's a good
yeah.
sign, Tom, right? It means you're doing the right thing. How about you, Robin?
Well, no, and I think Robin would agree too that I feel really lucky, right? That I kind of figured out what I was interested in, right? Pretty early on. And now, unlike Robin, I started in a kind of a peripheral field, right? I started in welding, and that's kind of how I learned how to weld when I was like 9 or something like that, and and then as a kind of a natural progression of that, a lot of the shops that I ended up working in had machine shops. So you start wandering over there and doing some of that work, right? And learning from those people and then, you know, you get involved, right? And you get interested and you keep pursuing it, right? So yeah, that was how I was hatched, is in the welding shop. So but yeah, yeah, I don't think I wouldn't change much. I
How
wouldn't
about
change much.
how about you, Robin?
It with the premise of, like Tom said, of given more years from where I am right now, I would probably say, okay, you have to put your big boy pants on and uh, actually think of developing a business with employees to actually make all these ideas you have, because it's going to take an army to develop
Yeah.
to do all these things that are sellable, useful ideas, and still not get out of the intimately involved, because as soon as I was like a businessman instead of actually doing it, that would be over. I know I'm not really a businessman, but the premise of thinking more of actually running a business, get somebody to run a small shop to produce some of this stuff, and not be such a wuss. Just because it's easier to. It's a whole lot easier just doing kind of a job shop environment. You get a drawing, you send it out, and you have a nice, consistent, flow of work usually, and that's one thing. But to step out and do a product line or something like that is another animal. So I'm probably going to do that in a scaled down version of that now. I'm thinking of attempting to switch gears and do more product, or I might even make precision ground stones.
I hear it's a good business.
Um,
To be honest, it's a I've been sort of a, what do you call it, a solopreneur, or a one man shop for 25 years, and that's a delicate balance between I'm interested and good at business, or I'm interested and good at doing a thing, and then finding that sweet spot. I don't claim to have been successful at it yet, but I look at people like John Saunders, who went from the toolmaking in the bedroom, doing something for work that he wasn't enjoying, and then building this business, which has him going more and more away from the hands-on into the business, but yet he's also kind of turning that knob back and forth, trying to keep one hand in the shop and one hand on the MBA.
Yeah, see, that's a tricky thing to balance, right? And I get asked that question pretty regularly, is why don't you start your own business? And my answer typically is, why would I want to do that and wreck what I have, right? And because, you know, sure, the potential is, if money is what you're interested in, the potential is certainly higher, having your own business, right? But um, but it's at the expense, I think, for me personally, of less hands-on and less of the creative part, right? That is the part that I really love and enjoy, right? And but I'm not going to knock anybody for starting their own business and looking for that potential, right? There's lots of people that are deeply satisfied by doing that, right? Because they have control over the whole process, right? And people have asked me, I want to start my own machine shop, and I go, well, why would you do that? And and to me, if they can't have that conversation, right, and the pros and cons of that kind of an operation, right, then they're probably not mature enough to do that, right? There is 10,000 ways to die in the machine shop business for somebody just starting out, right? And it doesn't take much of a screw up to bankrupt your company, right? Especially when it's small and fragile, right? So my experience is I see people that are technically awesome, like Robin, right? He's, without a doubt, technically excellent, right? Is he a good businessman? I don't know, probably. I mean, he's feeding his family out of a 300 square foot shop or whatever it is, right? So yeah, he's got some business acumen. But when you throw employees and some of those other things into the mix, it rapidly becomes challenging. I'm not
Well,
going to say unpleasant.
it's
I'm not
also
going to say unpleasant, but I'm going to say challenging,
it's
right?
also two different things.
It's two different things.
Running
That's
a
right.
business and running a surface grinder,
That's right.
or being a craftsman and running a business. Let's do it that way. Being a craftsman and running a business are totally different. And
That's right. Yeah, I mean, if you can't get the invoices out, your business will die, right? Even if
yep,
you produce the best technical work on the planet, right?
yep,
I have to tip my hat to John Saunders, right? As he understands that, and he balances the books well, right? He knows he's got to make money to keep his business alive, right? But he still wants to play in the shop too, right? And he's doing a pretty good juggling act there. And
one of the best things I ever was suggested, and I took it to heart, was get a bookkeeper. And I have a bookkeeper, and she's been with me now 11 years. And I had a bookkeeper before her that was with me for 4 years. So basically it's been longer than that. Anyway, it's been a long time. And I have to know enough about the books and the banking and the stuff. But she does a great job of taking care of all the stuff that would just suck up my time, and she does it in 1/10 of the time that it would take me to do it. So that for me has been a great expense, right? To hire somebody who spends one full day a week here, and that's it. And it's really been a good thing.
No, yeah, understanding what you're good at is important, and what your weaknesses are too, right? And that's just as important, right?
Well, we are coming down to the wire here. Anything you guys want to bring up that we haven't talked about?
No, I'm just going to say I had fun. It's good to see Robin. I don't get to talk to him as much as we used to. He used to he would call me from the parking lot when his wife was visiting her mom, and we would have these
Yeah.
we'd have these conversations while he was out in the car, right, waiting and for her, and but it's good to see you, Robin,
Yeah. Same
and
here.
yeah. Now with kind of COVID calmed down a little bit and travel easier, I want to come out to the East Coast and visit some of my friends out there and uh, and hang out a little bit. So hopefully we
Hey,
can do that.
Tom, my notes say that you had a question about New Hampshire power rates and my electric truck, which I don't think we have time to get to. But you also had a question for Robin about PI.
Oh, yeah. So I saw that there was a podcast on Within Tolerance about Dave Arneson and
Hmm.
professional instruments. Did you watch that?
Yes.
How was it? Was it any good or what?
Yeah, it was interesting. It was pretty
Uh,
much his story of coming up and from the beginning and how they kind of got into that business, just doing difficult
mhm.
stuff, and his father, I think, and grandfather, relative to the whole progression of how that company got started is very interesting. Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah, I'll go watch it. I've noticed that they've actually been trickling out videos reasonably regularly now,
Hmm.
right? And
Yep.
which is kind of encouraging. I don't know if they have some younger kids that are kind of piloting that or whatever, but they're pretty regularly popping videos
Yep.
out now.
Like
So
little reels, right?
Yep.
Kind of short
Yep.
videos. Yeah,
yeah, they're just shorties. Yeah.
I saw one on circularizing or sphericizing. What's the word? But some of their precision machines running, which was pretty
Yeah.
fascinating.
And they
Uh,
they actually they actually covered, like when we saw the one, like when I saw stuff being sold off from Precision Instruments, I'm like, what? You think they're
Are they
going down
call?
the tubes, but they actually mentions, and they had four different shops, and they realized condensing it into two made more sense. So that's where a lot of that auction
Oh,
stuff
okay.
came from, was just a downsize. There's still nothing's happened with the demand for their product at all.
Oh,
And
good. Yeah. Okay.
so on the topic of within tolerance, now Tom, no, Robin, you were interviewed on within tolerance, right? You did your
yeah, we both
story,
were.
and Tom,
Yeah,
you
I think
also.
I did that too. Yeah, it's been a
Okay,
while though. Yeah.
yeah. So for our listeners or our viewers, you can go back in the library of Within Tolerance and find 3 interviews for these 3 faces in front of you, all on their library. And I think it was Dylan does a great job
Hmm.
of
Yeah.
interviewing.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget that my love of Milanos were in part influenced by the precision with which they are manufactured.
The way they're
Yeah.
manufactured now has no bearing to when I stopped from it.
I'm still going to eat them. I'm still eating them.
Yeah.
And it's a weird, we're all connected in weird ways. And Tom, you're wearing a Mitch Rosen hat,
Yep.
who's a practical neighbor. So that's all pretty funny. Okay.
Well, this
With
whole. All right.
No, go ahead. What were you going to say?
No, I was going to say the whole. Like I said earlier, we meet all these people through our these areas that we're crossing over one another, and I never would have met Robin if there was no internet, right?
Yep.
I don't have much business in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, right? And I think of you guys as friends and people I can call and ask questions or bounce ideas off of, and it's pretty powerful stuff. So
Yeah.
It is, and I'll point out that once again that Tom is in Northern California.
mhm.
Uh, Robin is in, I guess, is it Lancaster, near Lancaster,
Yeah.
Pennsylvania, and
Hmm.
I'm in Southern New Hampshire. So we're literally crossing the country here.
So
Got
here's a fun final factoid before I sign off. Is Robin lives near Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and National Watch and Clock Museum is like 20 minutes or 30 minutes from him, and he's never been there.
Yeah. I
Well,
love the stare.
We're gonna close out with that, and
I've got the American Precision Museum up in Vermont, which is right over there, 2 hours. I've got the Waltham Watch Company Museum right over there, barely an hour, and I haven't been there either. And I'll make you guys an offer if you come into my neighborhood, okay? I will, with the help of one of our buddies who's in the chat, I think, we'll get you guys a tour of MIT and some of the fun stuff down there.
Well, I'll tell you what, Robin, if I come out to Pennsylvania this year or whenever, we'll go together, okay? And,
okay, sounds like a winner. Yeah.
All right.
Boys,
I gotta go.
All right, guys, thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Tom, thanks a lot. Robin, thanks a lot. We'll see you guys next Sunday for another PFG Live.
All right.
Peace.